And we do that, the building blocks for that, the three biggest building blocks are institutional, which has barely started, store of value or digital gold. Young people are much more comfortable with digital gold than gold.
So on the institutional side, that means investment institutions start investing in it. Mm-hmm. Young people start investing in it as a way to save and store their money.
Yes, yes. And then the very important use case that many people do not discuss is how important Bitcoin and stablecoins, which are backed by U.S. Treasuries, are going to become to the emerging markets. In emerging markets, many of them are at the whim of policymakers who show no discipline in fiscal or monetary policy. And so they're used to going through, they had a management turnover, so we moved away from that. But Palantir. Yes, Palantir is a platform as a service company, which we think is not only going to help governments move into the digital age, like our Defense Department, and now it's moving into other departments, but also these huge enterprises, because it's not forcing them to rip and replace anything. They'll build on top of whatever technology infrastructure is there, and over time just usurp the role of the legacy technologies. So very important company, we think, in the digital age. It's had a very big run. We have taken profits, and while it was having a big run, NVIDIA was selling off. It was down more than 50%. So we put some of our Palantir proceeds back into NVIDIA.
Is there anything else in the AI bucket when you're thinking about stocks?
Well, when you're thinking about chip, and what's interesting about it is they've stayed with it because 60% of its user base now is above 13, which is very interesting. It's the largest user-generated content provider out there. And what is fascinating about it is, I know one of my friend's daughter has started her own dress shop on Roblox. And what she doesn't understand is that she's learning about business, but she's also learning how to code, especially in this new vibe coding world. So I think it's going to be a very important company going forward. The interesting thing about gaming and technology transitions is that it is the only entertainment medium that has not fallen apart with technology transitions. It has actually grown because those who love their games from 25 years ago.
What's an ETF?
ETF, Exchange Traded Fund. So it treats a group of stocks like one stock. So ARKK is, it's 36 stocks, but you can buy them by purchasing ARKK.
And you can do that on your mobile phone by downloading.
You can do it on your mobile phone.
A bunch of different apps that allow you to just buy that one ETF, which means you own 35 stocks.
Yes. And
your team are basically choosing what those 35 stocks are.
Yes.
Based on your research.
Right. And ARKK are our highest conviction stocks, and they offer an exposure to all of the innovation platforms that we've talked about, whereas ARKI here in Europe is focused primarily on artificial intelligence and robotics, because we think that convergence is going to be pretty explosive. What you don't get there are the big three, and we think they'll all be successful, all three of them. Bitcoin the most. We're very interested in stable coins, but that's just like cash. And there are millions of crypto assets out there. We think most of them die.
Is there any way to invest in stable coins? Like, how do you invest in the
So
stable
indirectly, right now, it is through Coinbase. They have a deal with Circle, Any revenue that Circle generates, its stablecoin is USDC.
Yeah.
Any revenue, they split 50-50 in the U.S. Circle itself has announced that it is going public, and so we're looking forward to that.
And what's the sort of psychology or mentality one has to adopt to be a good investor?
Depends what you've bought. If you buy a strategy like ours, which would be in the aggressive growth strategy, put it in, averaging in over time, just like with Bitcoin, as I mentioned earlier, averaging in over time.
What does averaging in mean?
Averaging in means, buy 5 is on our website, arc-invest.com, and you can find a lot more information about our funds on arc-funds.com.
And I should probably say this is not investing advice.
It is not. And I want to make sure. Do your own research.
You can lose all of your money.
Yes.
You can lose all of it if you decide to do any of these things.
But that's why we put arc-invest separate from the fund site, because that's just research. Learn what you're investing in, or learn why we've invested the way we have. That's what we do all day long, is we try and help. Well, first of all, we're doing the research. We are making the investments. But I think one of the most important things we do is not only get tariffs on the U.S. down throughout the world, but maybe more important, get non-tariff trade barriers down. Like, for example, I didn't even know the UK would not accept our beef or ethanol. Well, now you're accepting our beef and ethanol. I don't know if people in the supermarkets will buy it, but anyway, but other countries, many more non-tariff trade barriers. And so he is just trying to bust that up, make it more visible. For example, Canada, I think they charged a 250% tariff on our milk. And one of President Trump's promises was to take care of the farmers. Okay, that's why you see the rhetoric around Canada. Now, do I agree with his style? Concerned that there are going to be people caught out by these new technologies and for whatever reason not willing to adapt, because there are going to be huge opportunities if they do. And so one of the reasons we give away our research, I'm very honored to do a podcast like this, is to get that word out. There is so much information available. You can just go to our site and listen to our podcasts. And if anything inspires you, go for it, because the opportunities are going to be enormous.
When you say you're concerned people might get caught out
in, disrupted industries. I mean, we think the whole transportation industry is going to be disrupted. We think retail as we know it's going to be disrupted as we are using the shoe. So we're going to artificial intelligence.
But he still can't beat a machine, can he? He still can't beat the best machine in the world.
No, he can't. But I mean, he can occasionally. But people don't want to go see machines competing against machines.
I get that because humans like human error and they like to be able to relate and to aspire. But as it relates to the world of work, the incentive is productivity. Mm-hmm. And my humanoid robot isn't going to get sick, and it's going to have a PhD in everything. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to see a human failing at their desk. Right. I want the humanoid robot.
Right. But then your robot and your AI is really focused on the past, right? That's what it's ingested.
It can make predictions, though, based on that past.
Pattern recognition.
Which is how my brain works, right? It's like a neural network.
But that's why we chose the word disruptive. Disruptive means the tradition. That would be very interesting. I'd love to get a copy of that, if you could send it to me, can you?
100%. I'll email it to you straight after. When I asked ChatGPT earlier, I said, who is the number one woman in the world in investing? It repeatedly said your name. So that's a pretty remarkable thing. to have accomplished, especially in a male-dominated industry where there isn't many women that manage to rise to the top of that industry. So what is it about you in hindsight? You know, it's difficult to be objective about oneself, but what is it about you that meant that you were successful in a male-dominated industry, in an industry that's incredibly difficult to be successful in?
My advice to all young people getting into their first job especially, but even later jobs, is my mission when I started was to make my boss look brilliant. Now, why do I say that? It's much more applicable today and possible today than it was back when there were no computers and no cell phones, which is when I started, right? But what did I do? My boss wanted to communicate. He was an economist, and understanding the way the world works from a macroeconomic point of view was critically important. Now, when I got to New York, I could not even speak Art Laffer's name because the Laffer curve says if you cut tax rates that are too high, you will get more revenue. And what had happened is Ronald Reagan had cut tax rates, but Paul Volcker at the Fed was trying to starve the economy of inflation. So we were in back-to-back recessions, and no, the government wasn't getting more revenue. So Art Laffer was, I couldn't say anything, but, that was fine. I knew he was going to be right, and we were right. That was the story of the 80s and 90s. And that's why Jennison Associates and the chief investment officer there, Sig Sigalis, gave me an opportunity to get into equity research. I wanted to grow. I loved the stock market. And he loved my conviction. And so he started me on cyclical. He's seen the reach that X has. And he's also, I think the other thing, and I haven't answered your question, it was just very nice of him to do that, and I see it's a typed one page and very sweet.
We have a closing tradition on this podcast where the last guest leaves a question for the next guest, not knowing who they're leaving it for. And the question left for you is, great question for you. What is the craziest idea you ever had that turned out to be right?
Well, there are just a few. One thing that it's not that crazy, but it just gives you a sense of how not obvious in the early days of ARC. I remember saying, well, autonomous vehicles are robots. And I was in a research meeting and everybody said, no, they're not. And of course they are. It's a crazy idea, and there was something, something that's going to happen. Another one was, and this was on, these are just little ideas in terms of how things hit my brain, but someone was talking about Boring, which is another one of Elon's companies, the underground transportation.
Digs tunnels and stuff.
Yeah. I forget what someone said in a post on X, but my answer was Mars, obviously. And people were laughing at that. And then as they were talking about it, they were saying, of course they're going to put that transportation system underground. We learned why you shouldn't have it on top of the ground from Earth. So just the little things catch me in a funny way. It's not the craziest. They're just like, oh, maybe that is the way things are going to work.
I wonder if Elon dies before we get to Mars, or if he just dies in the next 10 years from anything, from any cause, how much of an impact that will have on our rate of progress, generally, with space and electric vehicles.
Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Support the channel by liking this video, subscribing, and enabling post notifications for more content on crypto and digital assets. Check out our other videos and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement helps with the YouTube algorithm and keeps the content coming. Thanks for your support. Enjoy the video.